Good evening. Welcome to the City of Opa-locka virtual workshop. We've called these workshops since COVID started to give our residents and everybody updates on what's going on. Recently, we've started to space out these workshops and tackle a few subjects that are pertinent to doing city business. So today we're going to tackle a few agenda items. But before we start that, Madam Attorney, could you state the emergency protocols that govern this meeting?
Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69, issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.54 5B2 of the Florida statutes. The members of the City Commission appearing remotely for this meeting are Vice Mayor Davis, Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Kelly, and Mayor Paget. An opportunity was given to the public to email the city clerk prior to the workshop. The city clerk will, at the appropriate time, state for the record whether there have been any questions, comments, concerns on items that you will hear on this evening's agenda. This meeting is being streamed live at www.youtube.com/user/City of Opa-locka.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Bass.
Here.
Commissioner Burke. Vice Mayor Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Present.
Mayor Paget.
I'm here. Commissioner Kelly, could you lead us in invocation?
Our Father and God, we thank you for all of your many blessings. We thank you, God, for life, health, and strength. Continue, God, to watch over our community, watch over this nation. As we come together, give us wisdom, knowledge, understanding of those things which are pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Chief, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, could you state the protocols for public comment and how many public comments we have and just move forward with that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So the public had an opportunity to provide public comments for this meeting up until 3:30 p.m. today by emailing public comments at opalockafl.gov or via a pre-recorded message at 786-618-2636. And at this time, Mr. Mayor, there are no public comments.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to our first agenda item, discussion on the city's response to coronavirus. Mr. Manager, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as everyone is aware, as everybody has been watching the news, the state of Florida is currently experiencing a surge in regards to COVID-19 positive cases, with a large number coming out of Miami-Dade County. Our testing center that typically has the workload of 200 per day are now testing on average between 430 and 450 people per day. So their maximum testing capabilities have doubled in a half, basically. This leaves very, very long lines within the residential area. We have had some residential concerns in regards to individuals testing and in regards to their parking and being standing across the street from resident houses, in regards to concerns related to potential individuals being COVID-19 positive. The city has actually invested more money into the testing site, as everybody's aware. The fencing that is around the testing site has been invested by the city. We have a drinking fountain that has been placed at the testing site, which has been being financed by the city, as well as there are tents that should be installed within the next week that's coming from the state of Florida. And so we're right now sharing resources and trying to source various different items for the testing site to make everybody comfortable that's coming out and testing. The average wait time for somebody walking up is 4 to 6 hours. People with appointments have a separate line, which they get through much quickly. I put emphasis on this to our residents if they want to get tested to contact 311 and try to schedule their appointment because the walk-up lines are pretty long. We want to make sure that everybody is kind of serviced in the appropriate manner. Of course, there are more than one there's several testing sites in Miami-Dade County and within the state of Florida that our residents can use, but I would think that our residents want to use a testing site that is within Opa-locka. So that is very, very, very important to kind of emphasize. Another update is our presence in City Hall is diminishing as far as staffing. We have reduced the amount of staff within the City Hall. Now we have employees that are working half the week at home, half the week in the office, and various schedules as determined by the various departments based on their needs. This doesn't include critical services such as police and public works. So we have to be more cognizant in regards to making sure that our employees and people that come to and through the City Hall, even to conduct business within the buildings and licensing department, are safe. We do have a new temperature measuring device that's been installed in City Hall, if anybody's been in City Hall recently. So that device does take everybody's temperature coming into the building. But as we all know, COVID is spread both symptomatically and asymptomatically. So individuals may have a COVID-19 and not actually have a temperature or experience any symptoms. So the city has been very, very focused and kind of dedicated in doing that. Our HR activities have increased. We're using Zoom to conduct interviews in various key areas within the city for hiring in various different positions that are vital to the operations of the city. So we have been extra vigilant in making sure that we make ourselves available via Zoom and actually conduct most of our, if not all of our meetings via Zoom, unless we're meeting 2 or 3 people within the city manager's conference room, which is within nominal specifications for social distancing. This morning at 7:05 a.m., the county mayor signed emergency order enforcing mandatory mask wear within the county. Their penalty is a misdemeanor arrest, up to 6 months in jail, and $500 plus fines. So that was signed this morning at 7:05 a.m. by the county mayor, and that is to go on to further notice. So there are a lot of changes that we're seeing within the state and the county. They're dialing back, opening up the state. They're dialing back, opening up the county. The mayor in his press release has already stated that based on what goes on this weekend, he may dial back as far as starting to close non-essential businesses back as we were when this epidemic started. So we're really trying to check the temperature and the pulse of what's going on based on our COVID positive rates within the county and within the city of Opa-locka. This actually brings me to an excellent subject, talking about green spaces. If we've had this discussion about a month and a half ago, I would tell you we probably would be close to open up our green spaces within the city of Opa-locka. But as everybody is aware of the COVID positive rate rising, open up our green spaces and having programming within our buildings is very, I wouldn't recommend that at this time. And at this point, I cannot even pinpoint when we'll have our park facilities back open, including, but not limited to pool as well. I know those are questions that were shared by various members of the commission. We have driving out various marketing campaigns. We are going to kind of discuss the Mask Up campaign and something that we want to look at doing next week as far as doing a caravan throughout the city, giving out masks in various areas of the city that we feel are vital to ensure that we educate in regards to COVID-19 and masking up within the city of Opa-locka. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Mockins to kind of go over marketing and PR and what we've been doing, and then I'll take any questions that we have in regards to COVID-19.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we cannot hear you, Ms. Mockins. Oh, you have a point, Mr. Davis? Vice Mayor Davis?
I thought the manager was open. I thought the floor was open for questions.
No, he has Ms. Mockins going first, and then he's going to open it up for questions. But I think Ms. Mockins' mic was not working.
Okay, thank you.
You want to try it again, Ms. Mockins? All right. So I think she may have to log out and log back in. Do you want to wait for her, Mr. Manager, or you want to open up questions? I can't hear you.
We can go with questions at this time until she gets back on.
All right, Vice Mayor Davis.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, as it relates to testing, I know the manager spoke about appointments. I know I had a couple of residents reach out in regards to booking those appointments and said that, they were unable to do so via online and the number that was provided. So just want to know, I guess, if the manager could look into if it's even available as an option, because I know, more people are getting tested. And, as we get an influx of people from
Vice Mayor Frozen.
I'm sorry?
Continue, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Okay. Yeah. So as we get an influx of people outside of our community, I want to ensure that, we are giving some sort of priority, to our residents. Because as you say, that was the whole reason for us opening up the site, because many of them, are unable to, have access to transportation. So having a site that's, close where they can walk up and get tested is very important. So just want the manager to look into that and make sure we are, giving that opportunity to our residents.
All right, so it looks like the manager had to step off, but I would jump in on that part. I was going to state this a little later, but we do want to give a shout out to the mayor's office. I've been speaking with them in regards to the testing site. Not only did they increase the number of our testing capacity, almost doubled it. One of the things that they're thinking about doing based upon the people that go there is to restrict not restrict, but give priority to those in this district, 33054. So most likely that may take effect next week. So right now they just opened up the testing capacity over the past week, and seeing if the numbers aren't looking to where there's a lot of Opa-locka residents, then we may be able to restrict it to a 33054 zip code. So that is something we're looking into doing now. But also I do want to make sure, please give kudos to the county mayor's office for opening up the testing site to to basically double our capacity. They also installed fans there. They also put in, tents. So he's trying to do different things to make it a lot more comfortable within the city of Opa-locka to go there and get testing. And I'll speak on the mask thing in a moment, but yeah, I'll speak on that in a moment. So, Mr. Manager, I see Ms. Mockins is back on. You still want a response from Mr. Manager, Vice Mayor? Okay, you good? Okay.
That was fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. So I think Ms. Mockins, are you back on?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
All right, you can proceed,
great.
man.
Good evening to the mayor and the board. The report for this week is that we've continued our reporting efforts on social media, posting in trilingual languages. 2 of the videos that we posted this week received close to 900 views. That was the mayor's message, as well as our virtual town hall that was on Saturday. We have ongoing messaging now in regards to commission meetings, the weekly Opa-locka We're Working for You campaign, the weekly staff mask up photos. We've also been continuing the COVID-19 awareness, hurricane preparedness, and the curfew reminders. We've issued several press releases this week on food distribution, a recap on the virtual town hall, and the partnership with the Opa-locka CDC in regards to the census. Completed the Mask Up Opa-locka photo shoot with all of the commissioners. Issued 2 newsletters and requested for the Mask Up campaign to have a caravan either on next Friday or next Saturday, depending upon availability. It would be about 2 hours that we would be asking. It would start at Shabandi Park and have 4 stopping points at highly dense and frequented areas to distribute masks. The caravan will be led by the electronic billboard with all of the pertinent information for the Mask Up campaign, with educational slides and the City of Opa-locka seal, of course, and different graphics and potential music. Where we are right now is we're looking to solidify whether or not it is convenient for all involved and what hours would be best. And that would conclude my report. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments for Ms. Mockins?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Bass?
Thank you so much. Ms. Markins, again, thank you so much. I am very pleased of where we are as it relates to our COVID-19 notifications and what we're doing, the projects that we're conquering in order to spread the word and to teach a more safe practice to our residents and even to ourselves. Again, thank you. I am just looking forward to see what else you have in store for the city. I think we're going into a good place, and I know there's a lot left to be done, but kudos to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mockins, for your report. I'm glad to see we're going to do the caravan. I was wondering what happened to that idea. On the big truck that you're going to have with the signage, it's going to be in all of the languages, and you said you're going to have music, various types of music. Is that what I heard?
Yes, sir. That is the plan.
Okay, you said on Friday and or Saturday, depending upon
The availability.
Say it again.
Your availability as a board.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anyone else? Again, I also want to thank Ms. Mockins coming in and really putting a brand on the city and making sure that we address our residents in this pandemic and crisis. This is exactly what we needed, and I want to thank you for putting in the work and making this happen and going a step further and really diving into making sure quite a few of our other priorities are also addressed and taken care of. So thank you and much respect for your time and your work being here within the city of Opa-locka. No problem. Mr. Manager, you still have to, any questions for the manager on the COVID?
It's me again. I had one question. I wanted to know about the summer camp. I haven't heard anything else as it relates to summer camp during summer. And I wanted to also know if the number is still at 80 appointments for testing.
I'll meet your mic, Mr. Manager.
To answer your first question, there will be no summer camp in the city of Opa-locka this summer. So that determination was made a couple of weeks ago. And then as far as the number of walk-ups compared to appointments, that has changed. I will reach out to the county in regards to that. I can tell you we have way more walk-ups than we do appointments. We still have about 80 appointments scheduling per day, with about averaging about 20 to 30 no-shows. So the majority of the individuals being seen are walk-ups. And the Shabundi site is a huge emphasis on walk-up appointments at that site. It's one of two sites, or maybe three now, that actually allow walk-ups. So a lot of emphasis is placed on walk-ups at Shabundi compared to appointments.
Thank you.
Anyone
Mayor?
else? Commissioner Kelly?
Thank you. Mr. Manager, as it relates to COVID-19 and social distancing, have we seen, because I didn't see the week report, I know we get one. Has there been any dramatic changes in that, in those numbers?
I have Chief Dobson speak on that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commission. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
for this week, Commissioner Kelly, face mask warnings were 455 and social distancing warnings were 226. So the social distancing warnings this week were down from last week. They're down from last week about maybe 100 or so on the social distancing. But the face mask warnings are around the same number.
Thank you. As it relates to social distancing, particularly in restaurants or things of that nature, I know it's been a big push talking about that. Are we doing anything differently? I know that the county and some other cities has been really cracking down on the converging, I guess, of people in these venues. And I know they, shutting down seating restaurants, et cetera, at a certain time and those things. Are we following that same lead? Are we being more restrictive, or have we seen any change in that regarding the social distancing component in these kind of venues?
Mr. Mayor?
You have the floor.
For the police department, we've conducted 185 business checks within this week. And as far as the restaurants themselves, they've actually been in accordance with, say, 25%. Most of the restaurants that we've had in the cities, they've had either the tables yellow taped off or taped off, and minus people eating in the restaurants themselves, they've actually been in accordance with what we've been doing. And we've actually definitely been following the county's rules on the restaurants themselves.
Okay, all right. I have received some concerns about those type of venues. Okay, so you're saying that your folks are complying. I'll just see what's going on. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Along the same lines as Commissioner Kelly, one other observation I saw that other cities in the county are doing is creating mechanisms for people who patronize their businesses to, I guess, report any businesses, that aren't in compliance. I know the city of Miami has done it, and I think Miami-Dade County has also done similar measures to engage their residents, almost as watchdogs, if you will. So I don't know if we've done, something similar along the lines, but definitely using our residents on the enforcement side, I think would be beneficial.
Actually, Mr. Manager, are you able to, do we have an update on the call center that I think would be actually one of the solutions to Vice Mayor's concerns?
It's still going to be a 2-month, 60 to 90-day implementation for the call center, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, when you say 60 days from now, or?
From when we started the endeavor. So we're within the 60-day window right now. We've already been 30 days past, the contract's being executed. So we are making progress towards that.
Okay. All right. Anything else for the manager on the COVID response?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly?
If I can follow up on the Vice Mayor concern. So right now, if a resident or anyone has want to report a business or a restaurant or anything that's out of compliance, where are they actually calling while we're preparing or putting together this call center? Where are they actually calling right now? Because I can tell you a lot of folks are reluctant to just call the police, et cetera. That's why a lot of them don't do it for code enforcement, because they feel like, people are going to come back at them. So where are they actually calling if there is a violation they believe is occurring?
So at this point, and I'll kind of speak on that, at this point, there's no alternative call center other than calling the police department. There's no alternative. I know I've been getting emails from residents in regards to concerns, me personally, but I know majority of those complaints are coming through the police department due to not having a call center, and then due to not having a shortage of staff at City Hall. Is also challenging until we get this new phone system back up and running. Well, actually up and running, so staff are able to take city calls from home. Right now, staff, they're having calls transferred from the city phone to to their city cell phone. So there is no solid number, but I'll speak to Ms. Mockins after this meeting, and we'll figure out a mechanism and kind of put that out on social media and potentially put that out in a release.
So is that, okay, so when they call, Mr. Mayor, when they call the police department, are they calling the 2877 number? Because that's always been the challenge. When you call, they get shifted over to the county. And it may not be a call that requires county, it's really for the city. And I know in the past, we told them to call the 2877. So is that the number they're calling, and is the switchboard or whoever answers aware of the fact that if you're not calling for, public safety and you're calling for a violation of this or other things, because that's what's normally occurring. If you call that 2877, normally you still get put over to the county, go through that whole loop, and we get frustrated. So that's why I was asking, is there a number that they can call if there's a violation for the restaurant or the business not complying, et cetera? So you're saying to call the police department. So is which number they call it? Is it the 2877?
Chief.
Hello?
Mr. Mayor?
Got the floor.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Kelly, the 2877. And we've used that as our non-emergency number. So dispatch has been advised to filter the calls before sending calls over to Miami-Dade County, instead of just transferring everyone now, to filter the call to see if it's a call for service or non-emergency issue that we can handle here, instead of forward it over to the call over to Miami-Dade County.
And those calls, Mr. Mayor, to the chief, my last question on this, those calls that go to that 2877 are recorded as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? City manager on coronavirus? I wanted to just reiterate, please make sure that y'all let the mayor's office know the appreciation for responding when it comes to this COVID-19, especially with the city of Opa-locka. As you know, for the past 6 weeks, we've been talking about instituting a mask law within the city, and doing it in a way in which we won't have to charge people with misdemeanor of $500 or up to 60 days in jail. And due to the cost of it, we decided not to move forward as a city, and hope that the county could move forward. I've spoken to the mayor's office about the need for a mask law. I think I was one of many other calls that he received, and finally instituted a mask law throughout the county. And they're actually in the process right now to modify their civil citation program so that it can be a civil citation instead of a locking people up. So once those systems are put in place, hopefully within the next 60 days, people won't be locked up for not wearing masks. So I want to give a shout out to the mayor's office for being proactive on making sure that that's being addressed within the city. So moving on, if nothing else, let's move on to the resolution about code enforcement. Commissioner Burke, do you want to start, or do you want the manager to start, or how you want to move with that?
You got to unmute yourself, Commissioner.
Yeah. You mean with the investigation for the citations?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Manager, you can let me know what you have found out.
All right.
Okay.
Manager,
So through the mayor.
Through the
you
mayor.
have the floor. You have the floor.
So we've pulled up every citation that was written on the properties in regards to this specific matter. I had a 5-year pull done on the said properties. I did email the commission the paperwork and intentionally didn't provide any substance to it because I wanted to discuss it here in this forum. Early on, if you look at some of the paperwork, you see 2 signatures on the documents and requesting the dismissal of various citations, as well as you see rulings that were issued by the special master, basically cases being dismissed on the city's request in regards to the properties. Full transparency, there are 2 documents that you see my signature on, which are co-signed by 3 individuals: the code enforcement officer, at the time the chief of police, myself, and then 1 other person. The actual code, I think another individual signed off on it. So you see 4 sign-offs in order to void a code enforcement citation. In older cases, you see 2 signatures, the code enforcement manager and the city manager, but you don't see any other signatures on the documents. Also what we discovered at actually having code enforcement do this inquiry, that the property still have about $5,000 plus dollars of citations still on the property. So the statement that there are no citations on the property is false, and it's information that was provided to me prior to doing this thorough research as directed by the commission. So there are still citations equaling over $5,000 on the properties. An inquiry was made in regards to looking into the citations further as far as doing random sampling in regards to code enforcement citations. So I've had IT pull every dismissal that was issued over the last 5 years. It was 3 years that were requested. I had IT go back 5 years for dismissals and 5 years for voids, where tickets were voided out. Over the next week or so, I'm going to do random sampling, where I'm going to randomly pull code enforcement violations that were either voided or dismissed, and have that paperwork pulled from the files to look at the causation of those voids. Voids are the key I'm going to really focus on, and as well as dismissals to go beyond the property. So a couple myths that are kind of busted here is there are over $5,000 of citations still on said properties, all the PIN numbers related to the sale of this and very related to the development project. So the number 0 is incorrect. Secondly, early on, there are signatures from the code enforcement manager and city manager Yvette Harrell in regards to dismissing citations, some without the signature or endorsement by the code enforcement officer, and some do have code enforcement officers' names on it. You can't verify. We're in the process of verifying those valid signatures of the code enforcement officer, or was the code enforcement officer's name just placed there? As far as policies and procedures, as everybody knows, there's a working knowledge of how code enforcement operates. There's nothing in solid in writing, and we're currently putting things in writing based on operational audit. So I know building and code are currently coming up with policies and procedures. I know under my tenure, unless I have 3 co-signatures on a document stating why it's being voided without and having source documentation, I would not void code enforcement ticket or request a dismissal. And so in order to address some of the requests that were made by the members of the commission, not specifically by Commissioner Burke, to do further dovetailing into looking at voids and dismissals, I will be doing random sampling over the next week and a half, and then we'll be reporting to the commission my findings. I have experience in doing audits and compliance reviews, so I know how to do statistical random sampling and actually pulling documentation and going there. I'm going to deal with it personally, along with maybe ask Jerry to probably assist me to kind of do the random sampling and kind of pull documentation, just have a second set of eyes there and kind of go from there.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
You have the floor.
to the city manager. Mr. City Manager, you still, I still have not heard you say who voided those, the citations in question.
So as I wrote, this is a public meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to share a lot of that information. I'm giving
Yeah,
general
okay.
So
Yeah,
that
okay.
is the reasoning. But
Yeah, Charles.
the commission does have the source documentation with names on them. I did email that out to the commission.
Yeah, I'm
So
gonna be-
documents do exist where the commission does have visibility of those documents and they can see the names that are on the documentation, and I'll provide further substance. From this point, I'm going to kind of move forward and deal with the random sampling portion of this, where I'm pulling out voids and pulling out dismissals and kind of look through those and see if there's a pattern and kind of go from there.
Anyone else have any questions or comments for the manager on this subject?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
thank you. Mr. Manager, I looked at the information that you did send out, and I'm very troubled at what I'm looking at. I'm going to defer my comments since you said you're going to do some further sampling and analysis and see what you come up with and the accountability aspect of it. So I'll just wait. How long do you anticipate having some kind of document to the commission with some kind of finding or analysis based on your sampling?
2 weeks, if not less.
Pardon me?
2 weeks, if not less, Commissioner.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll reserve, because this is very troubling, not so much with just the properties that originally had been kind of the focus, but just looking at what you submitted and some of the stuff that's been dismissed even by city request is very challenging. But I'll wait the 2 weeks to see, to hear your final analysis after you've done your sampling and give the commission an updated report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor Davis?
thank you. Yeah, I must admit, along the same lines as Commissioner Kelly, I'm troubled. You know, not just with the fines, but with the developer agreement, as well as the site plan. Like I didn't agree with that whole process. I know normally we see both items, you know, site plan and develop agreement in unison is usually included on the same agenda. I don't usually recall it happening in the past in that way. So going forward, you know, I would hope when we do have agenda items, we have both. You know, and to touch back on the fines, you know, I don't know how that has happened. Obviously, we had some loopholes in the past that allowed it to happen. But going forward, you know, I heard your presentation, and you know, I'm excited that you guys are implementing the proper controls, and you know, and making sure that that level of accountability is involved in that process. But you know, I'm along the same lines as Commissioner Kelly. I'm just floored.
Through the mayor.
Mr. Manager.
You know, I think my deepest concern is the level of checks and balances in regards to the process, in regards to voiding or dismissal of tickets. And just looking at documentation based on what I'm looking at now. Again, a document with 4 signatures where you have 3 or 4 different people looking at voiding out a ticket for a specific reason with source documentation is wonderful, right? But then you have, like I said, you have the instance where you just have one code enforcement person and the city manager's signature on it with no other signatures that are available in regards to that, with no specific reasoning of why a ticket was dismissed, and no reasoning or why a ticket was voided. So that is very concerning to me. As everybody is aware, you know, this is a concern, a commission concern. So as I spoke to the mayor, we were going to do random sampling, and we pulled the database. I have every void that happened in the last 5 years. I have every dismissal that occurred in the last 5 years. And just to be fair, we're going just to pull several samples out of citation numbers, both out the void and dismissal pile, and then pull that documentation and kind of go from there. And then I can kind of put some synopsis on what we can do kind of moving forward to kind of address these things. A lot of voided tickets, over 100, a lot of voided tickets over the last 5 years, a lot. So, you know, I don't see a reasoning why so many voided tickets that we have. Dismissals are different. You know, a case can be dismissed by a special master. So those dismissals come through the special master. But as far as the voiding, you know, it's a lot. And like I said, I went back 5 years just to get a large enough sample.
Anyone else?
Mayor Paget, to the manager.
Commissioner Bass.
Just a quick question. Because of the lack of enforcement with policies and procedures, I would say in the past, not having the correct amount of signatures on the tickets, does that void out the contract if it's a contract?
So you're speaking on, so when I speak on signatures.
Yeah. Does it void out, not having the correct amount of signatures on it, does that void out the fee? When I say void out the fee, that contract that was verbally made or whomever made between the city and that owner, because it wasn't done correctly, does that void it out?
So the city, so through the mayor, so the city takes absolute responsibility. If the city dismisses the citation, regardless of what reason it's dismissed, that doesn't necessarily go back to whoever that person is, that business is, or resident is that had the violation. They're going off based on information that the city is being provided, right? So it's being provided as legitimately being dismissed or a ticket legitimately being voided. So I could talk to the city attorney in regards to it. My first thought process on it is, I don't think we can just go back and reapply citations that were dismissed or voided. If the city represented that's what it was gonna be, what I can do is go back and see what the trend was at during a certain period of time, provide recommendations for improvement in the future, and then create policies and procedures to protect the city moving forward. So things like that don't occur.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one last question. Okay then, Mr. Manager. If that's the case, if we cannot go back and do these citations, then whoever illegally voided or dismissed these citations should be dealt with. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they were done illegally, whoever did it illegally, and I'm not talking about policies and procedures for going forward. I'm talking about now. We can do things to go forward, but this has been happening. This has been happening before, and it's still happening under your watch. So I don't want to be talking about, okay, we can't do anything about it because the city did this. The city didn't do it, an employee did it. Okay? And if we find out who that person is, that person should be dealt with because that's like taking from the city.
Mr. Mayor?
Madam Attorney?
Yes, if I may, in no way are the comments and statements that Commissioner Burke is making intended to be any directive activity to the city manager. He is expressing his thoughts and beliefs as to the process, and that is all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Yes, it is. Okay, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank Commissioner Burke for bringing this up to our attention and making it a priority for this whole commission. All of us want to make sure that this type of stuff does not happen within the city of Opa-locka, and that all of our rules, regulations, policies, and any thought, we want to make sure that we take the time to investigate and we do our due diligence to make sure our city shine. This is one of the things that I know personally I experienced before I even got involved in Opa-locka, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And I want to thank the manager. That's one of the main reasons why we recruited Mr. Pate, because he had that internal auditor experience to be able to investigate, review our policies and procedures and ensure that they are up to par, and we are doing this. So I know we've had quite a few crises that have been taking high priority of the manager and the city. But this has come to the forefront right now, and I want to thank the manager for putting in place a plan to address it, to investigate, number one, find out what has actually happened, because right now we are still in the investigation process to figure it out, and then also putting together a plan to make sure that it is addressed, backed up with policies and procedures to ensure that it doesn't happen again, and more checks and balances. So we're looking forward to the results of that investigation, and also the actions that will be taken to ensure that if there's any issues that moving forward, it won't happen again in the city of Opa-locka. So with that said, if there's anything else, all right, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Hold on, let me pull it up for myself. All right, commission priorities. As my colleagues know, this is something we've been putting on workshops since this new administration started, doing quarterly commission priorities. And then when the manager came in right before COVID-19 hit, he was wanting to lead up a discussion to start to consolidate our priorities into very clear guidelines on how we will be able to, as a commission, direct the manager on making sure that our vision as a city is implemented and we can hold him accountable. This past week, for those that were not there in the public, the commission was part of a Florida League of Cities training, where we got specialized training on the council manager government, on effective council techniques. And one of the key components of that was reiterated over and over is to ensure that we have a collective priority list that we provide the manager. So it was recommended that we do some type of retreat in order to do that. And I wanted to make sure that we had a space today to talk about what that would look like. It is coming up on a few minutes to our special commission meeting at 6:30. So I just want to put the question to the floor on how do we want to go about the commission priorities. If you may have noticed from the clerk, I sent over a list that when the city manager, when he first got here, well, not actually first got here, a few months ago when he was trying to figure out to consolidate our things, I sent him over a list of priorities that I personally would like us to consider. So I would love for us to figure out, how do y'all want to do this? Do we want to do a retreat? Do we want to do a workshop? Do you want to submit all our stuff in writing, how the manager bring it up, and we have a presentation. Like how does the commission want to ensure that we have clear guidelines and priorities for our manager?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Manager?
typically the manager kind of leads this part of it. And typically how it is done is a retreat is done with each department providing a comprehensive departmental update on what their department does, what their challenges have been.
Mr. Manager?
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Sorry,
I hear you now.
my screen blacked out. Basically, departmental update, briefing the commission on what each department does, what they've been prioritizing, what they're looking to prioritize to do. And then typically, each commissioner provides their feedback to those departments. That's memorialized in minutes. And then we come back for a second session at a different date and kind of go over those things that were brought up by the commission. And then you guys typically, it may be different in Florida. Typically a resolution or something's passed with a exhibit A based on the commission's collective involvement of what those priorities are going to be for that specific fiscal year. It's typically how it goes.
All right, sounds like plans. Anybody have any ideas, edits, or thoughts to that?
Not really any thoughts, edits, Mr. Mayor, but just point of clarification. Based on the process that the manager outlined, I'm under the assumption that we're going to be collaborating with staff. Is that true, Mr. Manager?
Typically in the retreat process, this is when staff collaborates with the commission and the manager's office. This is the place where the staff breaks down what they are doing, what their priorities are, typically coincides with budget time. And then that list is consolidated. And then we have specific metrics for each department and then we look at overall capital improvement for the city and various other things as well. So that's all kind of put together in a mixing bowl, and then something's memorialized as an exhibit A of a resolution that's passed on a fiscal year basis.
Okay, thank you. Is it also, I guess, angled with more of a strategic vision? I know usually doing staff retreats, I know for smaller organizations, of course, I come from the nonprofit sector. I know oftentimes, there's several ways of doing it. You can have a board retreat. Usually they do some part of it with, the board with the staff, and then they kind of, come with like a 5-10 year kind of vision of, like what collectively we would like to see ahead.
Exactly, and actually in the code, and the clerk can correct me, but I last reviewed it, the commission is actually charged to approve a strategic plan through the methodology that I just explained. And so typically there will be breakout sessions and various different things like that, but you guys went through training. I had already meet weekly with the staff as far as going over staffing priorities. But I think the retreat is the key where literally that's where the staff kind of directly engages with the commission in a very open manner.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Mayor.
Anyone else? Commissioner Kelly?
Thank you. Mr. Manager, I appreciate your concept, but I'm going to just, my perspective, and I know I'm going out, but I really want to focus at this moment on the budget and the structure of how or where we are now before we get too far down the road. I think the 5-year recovery plan and some of the things that I see that are mentioned in this document we received today, you're already working on. So I'm quite sure you have an idea of how to put that together. I don't have a problem with retreat for the commission going forward. Usually with retreats, there is engagement with staff, but I'm really more concerned at this point of the financial side and where we are and what needs to take place to make sure we remain on track and on focus. considering the document that you just sent us from the budget director, that's kind of where I am from my perspective at this moment. I think there will be a time and a need for a retreat, as you mentioned, but I think right now, that to me is a bigger agenda item. I'll put it like that. And some of those same elements will be engaged with staff and what is needed and what's projected given where your revenues are and how you will emulate into the 5-year recovery as finances improve, et cetera. That's kind of how I look at that at this moment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I can also say.
Hold on one moment, because we got 2 minutes till. I want to make sure I get all my colleagues in. So city manager will wrap it up with his comments.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Burke.
Okay, we can just write out what we feel that we're interested in and submit it to the city manager.
Those are the things that we're discussing. So that's one of the ideas, is just put on the floor, having workshops put on the floor, and the manager actually detailed the actual strategic planning session. So those are all things that we can consider doing. Commissioner Burke.
Yeah, thank you.
And
hold on, Commissioner Bass, you have anything else? Okay, all right. So yeah, go ahead, Mr. Manager, so we can wrap up.
So I did send out an email, which I'll resend this weekend to the commission in regards to requesting priorities. I can send that back out to everybody. If you want to list it down, I can consolidate a list and kind of go over it next week if we want to kind of do that. So I'm okay with that, Commissioner. Also, there will be a financial emergency board meeting this month. Robert, what's the day again?
Sorry about that. Tentatively, as I understand now, it's scheduled for the 14th, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, so the 14th at 2 p.m., there will be a financial emergency board meeting via Zoom. And I know a big focus on that is the 5-year plan and the city's upcoming budget. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
All right. So, Mr. Manager, I would love us to go through the strategic planning process as you outlined, because it gives us as a commission insight and understanding into what staff is working on, coupled with our current ideas and priorities that we had coming in as commission, and then put together that into a plan. And I think it is important for us to do that as soon as possible, because we do have a budget that we are putting in place and a 5-year plan that we're putting in place. And I think the 5-year plan should be informed, and the budget be informed and based upon what our priorities and what this commission, new administration wants moving forward. So I'm hoping that we can move on this ASAP as a high priority, so that next year's budget includes what this commission wants, and the years prior can also include the vision that our representatives elected us for to put in place. So look forward to seeing that. It is now 6:31. We had a point about agenda protocols. And I just very quickly touch on this, and Commissioner Bass, you may want to, but I know that at another thing that happened during the training that we had was the discussion on how we present items to the council, how they're researched. And one of the proposals was for us to allocate time on the agenda to discuss that at a further time, and a few things. So to make sure that we are following a proper process of submitting our information in writing to the manager. We're discussing it at a workshop, giving people opportunity to think through the idea, and then giving staff time to prepare the legislation. So we can discuss that a little further. I know we're going to be discussing that a little further moving forward, But is there any very quick points need to be made on that, or can we just move?
Just one quick point, Mr. Mayor. I know one discussion was moving the public comment section to the back of the agenda, and that was in response to my question in regards to limiting public comment to just items on the agenda. And then also having that conflict that, you know, people's First Amendment, you know, freedom of speech, pretty much right. And just, you know, being more responsive, being more inclusive, and creating opportunities for our residents to engage. So I don't know if, you know, if we decide to go forward with that and, you know, sponsor legislation and vote it up as a board, you know, that'd be something we decide to do and discuss at a later date.
All right, we'll do. So we will continue this conversation. Anyone else really quickly? All right. So we will be continuing this conversation, but due to the lack of time, and we have a special commission meeting, we do have to adjourn so we can get this special commission meeting started. So thank you everyone for attending this workshop and being here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Burke, second by Vice Mayor Davis. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.